welcome our friends and we welcome our participants who are joining us from all around the world. My name is Mara, and on the behalf of my colleagues at the Hebrew University's Division for Advancement and External Relations, I'd like to welcome you to this thrilling and groundbreaking roundtable conversation. We are honored to have with us some of our leading alumni who are trailblazers in the field of impact, investment, and social entrepreneurship. In this webinar, in collaboration with the Hebrew University's alumni organization, we will hear from Sessiel Balilius, who is the head of impact and sustainability at the Pitango Venture Capital, Yoel Heshin, chairman and founder at 2B Group, Sandrine Monsma, managing partner at Bridges Israel, and Yaron Neudorfer, CEO of Social Finance Israel. Moderating the roundtable will be Dr. Dan Mrome from our own Hebrew University's Jerusalem School of Business Administration and head of the Impact Investing Institute. There are a lot of topics that we plan on covering here. We might have time for a few questions, so please feel free to write them in the chat. If we do not get to them, please email me or the mail that we will now write in the chat. And now, Dan, the floor is yours.
Mara, thank you so much for this wonderful intro. I appreciate it. And thanks for all the efforts and energies put into this wonderful evening or morning or noon. I'm very excited to be here. And especially I'm excited to have distinguished panel members who are leaders and pioneers of the impact scene, both in investments and venturing in Israel. It's a huge honor for me to moderate it, and I'll speak less and give the floor to my friends and colleagues. We will speak about the world of impact, which for me is the ability to align capital and values. And I stumbled upon the world of impact a few years ago, and since then I'm in love. But still, we'll try to give a balanced overview of the scene in Israel and abroad, and we'll try to get some of the criticism about impact and not only about the bright sides of it. We'll speak about how can we generate positive, measurable, societal, and environmental impact alongside generating and obtaining financial return. And we'll speak about the vast opportunities of the impact world. So we'll speak about developing and developed countries. We'll speak about technology, and we'll speak about real estate and energy. We'll speak about venturing and investing, as I've said. And I really hope that until the end of this webinar, the audience will find each one of the ladies and gentlemen who are hearing us. I hope that you'll find a way to penetrate into this world and to bridge the gap between intention and action. And that would be an honor for us to have any questions and follow-ups both during the webinar and afterwards. As a personal note, I hope that we'll transform Hebrew University as an intellectual lighthouse to spread the gospel of impact. And I'm truly, and I'm saying it very humbly, I think that we have a role here, and I think we can accomplish it very soon. So we'll start with a self-introduction by the distinguished panel members. We'll start with Sessiel Balilius from Pitango Venture Capital, who's the head of impact and sustainability. I conceive her as one of the first in Israel to act in this field. And I'd like to ask you how, maybe if you could start with a personal story, how did you stumble upon impact? What are you doing today? And how do you see impact growing from now on?
Sure, so thank you, Dan, and hi everyone, and my colleagues in the impact investing world. I'm really happy to be here, certainly hosted by the Hebrew University, which is my home. So I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time with the right people, I guess. I was an entrepreneur in the early 2000s when the dot-com bubble burst, and was lucky to work with a Dutch family foundation, the Nober Foundation, who really thought about the burst of this dot-com bubble as an incident that really impersonated the disconnect between values and capital. And we started thinking about values, capital, like you said, Dan, but also tech and how this triangle gets together. I'm talking about the early 2000s, so impact investing was not a term. There were no sustainable development goals. The GIN, the Global Impact Investing Network, was not in existence. So actually, we're really shooting in the dark, very, very experimental, very open-minded to look at the economy in different ways and look at capital as a resource and not necessarily as an asset class. And I worked with the Nobel Foundation for many years, creating and investing in projects and companies here in Israel, but also formalizing and formalizing the ideas behind what is impact investing, what's the role of an impact investor, what's impact measurement, why measure, what should we measure, all these questions that today you can Google them. I was very lucky to be with the teams that thought about them initially. In 2011, I founded the first impact investing company in Israel that invested in early stage startups that are what I call impact natives. All of them early stage companies that aim to address a social or environmental issue with business practices and a tech solution, maximizing profits, maximizing impact. We made 8 investments through this vehicle. And 6 months ago, I joined Pitango Venture Capital, who was also one of my partners in Impact First, which is Israel's largest venture capital fund and probably the oldest, in adapting the world of ESG and SDG, so the world of impact and sustainability, into mainstream VC, not necessarily an impact fund, but actually mainstreaming impact investing into just general VCs. And to me, this is part of my vision as being someone who looks at the ecosystem and the world of impact as something that must happen, and also as something that there's just no way back. And I believe this is where the future lies. And the way to scale and the way to bring this to the mainstream is really to engage the largest funds. And I'm very happy to be the first person, I think, in VC around the world to hold this position and make this transition.
Thank you, Sessiel. Sandrine.
So first of all, thank you very much, Dan, for inviting me here. It's very exciting and exciting to be with 100 alumni of the Hebrew University. I think that out of the 4 panelists, I'm the least, in terms of number of years in impact, all of you are in this field longer than me. After graduating, I actually spent most of my career in general management. I started in Procter & Gamble and managed a medical device startup in Israel, managed a food company in Israel. And in my last general management job, I was in Europe. I was managing a company in Germany, Belgium, and Holland in the service industry. And one day I received a phone call from today my partner, Gal Chayut, who was working many years with Ronald Cohen in Apex. And he asked me, and we know each other from INSEAD. We studied MBA in the same school, and we knew each other for many years, but we never worked together. And he said, Sandrine, it was in late 2000, early 2016. Sandrine, have you ever heard about impact investing? And I said, no, I was never an investor. And I didn't know what it was all about. And he said, can I make a proposition? I will send you some stuff to read and you will go. I was living in the Netherlands at the time. I will send you some stuff to read. And next week you will fly to London to meet Sir Ronald Cohen and talk to him about impact investing. Because we are trying to establish a new type of fund in Israel. It exists in the UK for many years. And the rest was history. I mean, I read what impact investing is all about. And after you meet Sir Ronald Cohen, and I think all of us here see him as the godfather of impact investing worldwide, you cannot not join the impact revolution. It's just, it talks to your deepest values, your deepest common sense. I mean, of course, we should do no harm. Of course, fiduciary duties, thinking about how the world will look like 30 years from now. Of course, there is no contradiction between financial returns and doing good. Of course. The more you read, the more you say, that's where I want to be. I joined my two partners, Gal and Ran. Gal comes from the venture capital industry, many years. Ran comes from the private equity industry. And together we established in 2018, early 2018, Bridges Israel. Bridges Israel, I think, is the first of its kind in Israel. It's almost $80 million investment fund that invests both in a private equity model in Israeli companies that are located or serving the Israeli socioeconomic periphery. And parallel to that, we're investing in Israeli technology companies that have the potential to create global impact in a venture capital model. So we are doing both what we call impact growth and impact tech. And in 2 years, we invested in, I should say, 9 companies, because the last one was closed yesterday. And we are a team of 6, and very, very, very exciting to do what we're doing in Israel.
תודה. Yaron Neuderfer, the founder and CEO of Social Finance Israel. We'd love to learn about you.
Hey, thanks. Good evening, everybody, or whatever the time it is. We're in new geography. First of all, I'm happy to be here. I knew there will come a day that I'll have to pay back to the Hebrew University. So here we are. And I'm happy to be with my friends, Sandrine, Sessiel, Yoel, of course, Guy and Dan. 7 years ago, I just left my position as Chief Financial Officer of the Jewish Agency, which is the largest NGO in the country. And like we usually do, I was interviewed by the economic newspaper, The Marker, as a leave interview. And the reporter asked me about the new generation of philanthropists, of donors. And I said, the new generation of philanthropists is, they really want to see what their marginal dollar is doing for the beneficiaries. They're not like the old school philanthropists who used to say, here, this is the check, you go and do whatever you need. They want to see, and they think like investors. And then the reporter says, you know, this is the same mindset like Sir Ronald Cohen has in his vision. And he's looking for a CEO now. Why don't I introduce you to each other? And since then, and it's a true story, and since then we worked together and we co-founded Social Finance Israel, that I will elaborate on in a minute. But SFI, as we call ourselves, is really the right place for me to be, because it involves the exact sectors that are present in the whole world of impact investment. It involves investors and finance. It involves government to a certain degree. It involves the third sector, or the social sector. I served 12 years in the Israeli Ministry of Finance, out of which the last 4 years in Wall Street, doing all the borrowing for the state of Israel in the Western Hemisphere, and 7 years in the Jewish Agency, which is the social sector. And here comes Social Finance Israel. SFI is a part of a global network. We have social finance in the US and the UK, in the Netherlands, in India, and in Israel. And we are the first social and financial intermediary in Israel, who is, we do develop the ecosystem of impact investment by creating, bringing together investment products and investors, or investors to investment products. One of the most known one is the Pay for Success, impact bonds as we call it, But in the last couple of years, I started to help other new players in the field of impact investment to enter this field. Private equities and philanthropic foundations, including government and startups, and help them to measure their impact or think about their impact strategy. This is one thing. The other thing is that I chair the Israeli National Advisory Board on Impact Investment, which is a part of a global movement, which is a part of the global steering group on impact investment. And we bring together all the serious or the dominant and active players in this field around the same table to think together how to promote the impact movement, I would call it, in Israel. We're now a movement. One day we'll become a sector and then a market. So this is this evening is part of this whole path and journey towards becoming a market. And thanks for having me tonight. Thank
you, Yaron. Yoel Cheshin, Chairman and Founder of 2B Group. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. We'd love to learn more about you.
Okay, so my name is Yoel Cheshin, and I run some kind of family office that holds a few branches. One is 2B Angels, our high-tech fund, 2B Community, our impact investment fund, 2B Friendly, which is an NGO who helps corporates be a little bit more social, educates them, and 2B Hub, which is the House of Impact in Israel. Well, I started actually something like 10 years ago. I was an assistant teacher and a guy. I taught and studied philosophy and law. I really liked what I did. 10 years ago, my brother died in a car accident. And actually my brother was the business guy. I was the intellectual, and something happened after he died. And we switched. I always wanted to do business with my brother. He never wanted to do business with me, unfortunately. So after his death, I actually found myself pretty quickly dealing with many investments where I understood I needed to focus on one sole thing, and this is doing business. And there was some kind of promise to my brother and to bring good to the world as much as I can, as the best as I can. And then I founded 2B Group, where 2B holds for two brothers. So he did want to do business with me at first, but now I do business with him every day. So this is a trick I did for my brother. And so I started with 2B Angels, which is our high-tech fund. And it was a regular high-tech fund, actually. And very quickly, I came to the understanding that as a good angel, I started my philanthropic work, and I very quickly understood that we need to find more innovative way to bring more capital to the philanthropic table, which is not based on philanthropy. And I came up with this idea of what I call social shares, which I failed afterwards with it. But the idea was to build what we call community corporations that will allocate their profits to NGOs in order to relieve their burden on philanthropy. The problem with philanthropy, we'll always have philanthropy. But today, philanthropy is so great. So my mother was 40 years the head of the Jerusalem Foundation, and she knew how to donate. And the rule number one was the meeting between the donator and the one he donates to has to be equal. No inferiority, no superiority. It has to be equal. If she was the head of Jerusalem Foundation, and as much as you do a favor and you contribute to Jerusalem, we do a favor to you and let you donate to Jerusalem. But nowadays, when you have so many needs and NGOs who promote basic civil rights need to go and beg for money, this is a problem that we need to solve. There's some kind of inferiority, so we need to, it was in my mind to find ways to bring capital to the table which are not based on philanthropy, are not based on goodwill, on the rights of other people, and not on goodwill. And they're established 2B Community. An interesting investment that we're doing nowadays in 2B Community, we're going to invest in Ogen, which is a social bank that gives loans to people with 3% interest, people who are not supposed to get interest through the banks, or get interest something like 12% or something of the sort. So this is kind of businesses what you're doing 2B Community. In 2B Angels, we're trying to locate what we call a double unicorn, something that has a huge impact on the world, both in terms of social impact, or something that is human-centric and brings value on its face and has a very high potential. An example of that is Valoran, that is transforming the world, the roads of the world to be smart roads, for less car accidents and things of the sort, huge potential. And at last, what I'm saying is that we have something which I'm very proud of, our NGO, To Be Friendly, who helps corporations be a little bit more social, to bring to the table their core capabilities and together cooperate with other corporations to bring more value and synergy among corporations in Israel. And we're going to do it together by building the Business Roundtable Israel in a few months' time. So this is me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Yoel. Thanks much. So we're talking about a noble idea. Why shouldn't we generate both profits and a sustainable impact? It could be environmental, it could be societal, it could be whatever. We're speaking, from talking about 20,000 feet above, I think that the best way to inspire the attendees, the ladies and gentlemen who which are hearing us now, is to speak specifically about a project. And I'd love you, dear panel members, to speak about the thing that you're most proud of, or the thing that you want to be most proud of, a very specific project that could inspire us. And Sessiel, if I may ask you to start first.
Sure, but it's like asking me to choose between my children.
You can have two. In 2 and 3 minutes.
All right, so I'll talk about something that I'm doing right now and something that I did with Impact First that was before. And first I want to just make sure that people understand that impact investing is not any particular domain. Impact investing is in any kind of company or any kind of, in my case, technology. It can be cyber, it can be fintech, it can be insurtech, it can be property, it can be anything you can think of, because many times people think about impact and tech and they think healthcare or education or special needs or things like that, which are obviously within that domain. But this is not what this is about. It's about a mindset of changing the world through one of these solutions that are addressing the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'll give you the current example that I'm working on right now. So as I said, in Pitango, we have about 250 companies in our portfolio. And one of the things that I'm doing with the portfolio companies is I'm migrating them. So I'm trying to find the companies that are actually easily adapting to the world of impact. And I'm using this term to migrate them because I see them as impact migrants into adopting the ideas and methodologies of impact, starting from the ESG, the environment, social, and governance, which means how they conduct themselves as a company, and all the way to how they're addressing the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of these companies that I'm currently working with is an actual unicorn. Yoel was just talking about unicorns. It's a company called VIA. VIA is a shared riding company. It's an Israeli company that is spread around the world. And if you look at it from the business standpoint, VIA creates mobility solutions for people who need to get from one place to another in a way that is affordable and accessible, and in a tweaked way through their algorithms that allows people to get where they're going without having to change buses a lot, and also looking at the last mile of going into larger cities, etc. The VIA product is actually a system where public transportation is adopting their system to serve the local community. It can be people that are living in transportation deserts where there's a bus maybe once or twice a day, and all the way to people who eliminate the use of their private cars to go into city centers. And by doing that, they actually provide access to a lot of people to where they're going and reduce the carbon emission of private cars and congestion. Now, if you look at the same company and the same business and the same product through the social and environmental eyes, you can see very clearly that, first of all, VIA provides access of people wherever they are to wherever they're going. So it provides access to jobs, provides access to healthcare services, to education, gives the ability of children to get to school, provides access to people with disabilities who can't ride regular buses, provides access for people that really are very remote and cannot access their jobs. From our analysis, we can see that, first of all, the amount of people that are accessing transportation and through that accessing job opportunities, etc., is increasing. For example, think about COVID-19 situation where workers that are employed by the hospitals or even the supermarket checker that needs to be in her job or his job when there's no public transportation because of COVID-19. So VIA provides that solution. So when you look at the social perspective, you see that actually VIA really connects people and gives them the ability to access everywhere they're going. On the environmental side, you see that because there's a reduction of use of private transportation, there's a reduction of carbon emission, there's a reduction of the carbon footprint and congestion in inner cities and of course parking problems, etc., which can lead a city to actually build more parks and less parking spaces if more people use public transportation. If the public transportation is easy, it's affordable and accessible. So VIA is a very good example of a migration of a company that has a solid product and solution and business case. When looked at through the dimension of impact on society and on the environment, we can add a lot of dimensions into what they're already doing. And being a data-driven company, we know exactly how much the impact is. So that's just one unicorn. You want me to go on?
Sasiel will take only one child at a time.
That's going to be it then.
Sandrine, how can you inspire us with the one?
Because I knew that Sasiel is going to give a tech example, I decided to come with the furthest example you can think of from a tech environment. So I want to talk about Ibrahim Nassasra. Ibrahim Nassasra, who is also, by the way, Hebrew University alumni. He's a Bedouin businessman, and he grew up in a tent with 32 brothers and sisters, because his father had 3 wives, like it was common in his generation. And when he was 18, his father told him that he is going to be a teacher, because that's how it goes. Your father tells you you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be a nurse, you're going to be doing business. So he became a teacher, but very quickly he realized that teaching was not his vocation, and he started a transportation business with 2 of his brothers, became very successful, and got married, 1 wife, 4 children. And one day his children came back from school and he happened to be home, and they were very, very hungry. Now, I don't know how many of you know, but in Israel there is a program that is aimed at food security for underserved population. So all the schools in socioeconomic clusters 1, 2, and 3 get a warm meal that is heavily subsidized by the state of Israel. So his children were supposed, he lives in Lakia, and his children were supposed to eat at school. So he said, why didn't you eat at school? And they said, well, it's really ugly. He made a few inquiries, and then he found out that his school, who is a school which is located in Lakia, I remind you, is being provided by an ultra-Orthodox catering company from Kiryat Arba. So he said, well, that won't do. And no wonder the kids are not eating tzimes and the rest. And he took 4 women from Rahat and arranged with the Ministry of Education that they will provide Bedouin food to the school in which his children were studying. So that was in 2000. I think 14, and 4 women, 3 women providing a few hundred meals a day. Today, Nazid Impact Food is located in one of the best-in-class production facilities in Idan Ad Negev, just in front of SodaStream. Ibrahim employs 100 men and women from the Bedouin community. He provides more than 20,000 meals a day to Arab and Jewish schools around the country. He is consistently rated one of the top 3 suppliers of the Ministry of Education. And if you think that he's not making a lot of money, you are wrong. When we considered investing and we looked at his growth rate and EBITDA margins, we found out that he's one of the most profitable catering businesses in Israel. We invested in Nazid 14 million shekels at the end of 2019 in order to make the company bigger and stronger, to expand into new locations. And Nazid, in terms of impact rating, because we measure the impact of every company we invest in side by side to measuring their financial performance, they reached the highest score in Bridges, because I don't know how to explain the impact that a Bedouin woman who has never worked and suddenly can bring home 6,000-7,000 shekels a month, can become an example to her children and to her peers, can become empowered, can study to become a shift manager, can study Hebrew to speak properly. The change it does to the community and to the society is immense. And I think that when we created Bridges, this is what we had in mind. When we said investing in socioeconomic periphery, this is what we had in mind. I also think that it's the first ever private equity investment in the Bedouin community, in Bedouin businesses in Israel. And I hope it's not the last.
Thank you so much. Next time we want catering for Zoom participants. Yoel, I see that you're getting ready to inspire us. An example.
Yeah, we've heard Sessiel and Sandrine, so I will need to take another example that gives another angle to all of what we're talking about. And I will talk to you about a startup that is called, portfolio company in 2B Angels called Centrical. Well, as I said before, I started 2B Angels as a regular high-tech fund that is supposed to invest in regular startups. And I didn't have at first the impact idea with this high-tech investment in startups and then I established 2B community. So there was this two different mindsets. I started like everybody else, that they're supposed to be the side that I'm supposed to make money and the side that I'm going to help the world. It took me time to understand that we need to do both under the same entity. But I started with those two entities, and I did my impact investment into 2B community. And then I'm a Tonic member. Tonic member is a community of impact investors, and they have the 100% club, which is the club of those investors that allocate their own capital. I allocate my own capital, that wants to be 100% impact, or even if they're not 100% impact now, they're aiming to becoming in a few years' time 100% impact. And this is what I've made this decision. It's like a heroic decision that I'm going to be 100% impact. So after that, I needed to look a little bit different on my portfolio companies from 2B Angels, which I invested in them regularly with the lenses of regular businesses. And listen what happened. Something quite, I consider it a miracle, where most of my businesses, my startups, were invested with the lenses of regular business lenses. Most of them, from my point of view, were good enough impact investments, meaning that impact investment is very much a matter of spirit, And Gal Rimon, which is an entrepreneur of Game Effective, he started just as it's called gamification to enhance performance of salespeople in corporations. Not really impact, right? So the more you sell, the more you make money. Has nothing to do with impact. But Gal Rimon is the kind of impact entrepreneur that I mostly like, which is an impact investor who doesn't know he's an impact investor. And I like those people because they don't talk the values, they walk the values. They walk the talk. They just build things. And Gal Rimon is the kind of guy that whenever he solves a problem, a business problem, he solves it through a social way, so through a humane way. And what happened in the end, that Gal Rimon understood that in order to make the employer the best employer he can make him, then he needs to take care of him and make him better a better employee, and to nourish him in different aspects. So gamification turned to be centrical. The employee is in the center. We take care of you in terms of your performance, in terms of the way you learn. They build different kind of gamifications that people truly and deeply learn in the company. And third, engagement, to be engaged in the company, not to be alienated. And there is a huge impact, very interesting impact through something that was not supposed to be an impact. And this is important. This is important because maybe not investment, and maybe not every startup can be considered as impact by its definition. But every business can be a conscious business, meaning a business that knows its human-centric goal. And every corporate can have its human-centric goal, and whether it's impact or not, it has a meaning that we can try and pursue. And in many aspects, this is the goal of what we do all, to make us all understand that the meaning of the corporation is to bring value to all its stakeholders. Thank you.
Yaron, inspire us.
Okay, so thanks. So I will give a definitely different angle, which is closer to really social services. You know that the world, the traditional world, since the 1900s, social services were funded either by philanthropy or government budgets. We see government budgets grow, we see philanthropy grow, and guess what? We see social gaps grow as well, grow even faster. So we need to do something else. We need to be able to bring investors into the social services world in order to tackle and solve more social issues or social gaps. And if we can find the right mechanism to involve investors in investing directly into social projects, that will bring relief to a lot of social issues. That's on one hand. On the other hand, governments and philanthropy usually what they do is they fund inputs. If you're a government, you want to solve an issue, you see what you want to do, you issue a tender, you select the winner, who will execute the project, you pay them the money, and then you sit back and get what you wanted to get. Many times you do get it, more times you don't get it, and you don't pay for outcomes. Basically, what you do is you pay for inputs, and a lot of money is being left on the table or on the floor. And if we could move the public sector, government and municipal government, to pay for outcomes, this will be a dramatic change in the way government fund social services. And this is where we come into play with the concept known as a social impact bond or a pay for success. Basically what it is that you choose what you want to do with. You raise money from investors and you use it to fund an intervention, a very defined intervention that has predefined metrics of what is a success and how do you measure it. And if you are able to demonstrate that you had success and you measured or you alleviated the social issue, then someone will pay investors back their money plus a sliding scale of return that is connected directly to the level of success in achieving the social goals. Who is this someone? It's usually government, because this generates savings to government solving this social issue. So government will keep part of the savings and pay the investors the other part of the savings, and it's growing as a result of how much success you have in this social project. What I want to share this evening is really, after we try to explain the mechanism lightly, what I want to share with you this evening is really something that has a direct connection to the time we live in. We know now that COVID-19 is here to stay, at least for a little longer. And we know that apart from bringing alongside with it a lot of employment issue, we in Israel, and I guess that our participants or attendees from other parts of the world, we witnessed a serious issue with the elderly. At least in the first wave in Israel, the elderly people were locked in their homes, could not get visits, not from their family or friends, and not from the social services of the municipality. They were just totally isolated at home with no access to the outside world. Last week, we launched a social impact bond, the first social impact bond that will deal with elderly isolation and tackle directly this issue with the municipality of Tel Aviv. We raised a couple of million of shekels, and with the money we raised from investors, we're going to fund intervention that will help the elderly alleviate their loneliness. We're going to deal with some 200 elderly people that are defined by the Tel Aviv municipality as lonely. And we're going to intervene in two parts. One is a human part. We're going to send to use volunteers, not only to talk with them and visit them, because if this is what you do, then once you go out the door, they're feeling lonely again, but to create capacity among this population to take part in the social services the municipality offer. So we really want to give them the toolbox, not necessarily just sit with them and talk with them. And the other part is using some sort of technology in order, again, to give them the ability to communicate with the outside world and to get some content that is made specifically for this population. This is a very innovative project because if this is successful, then the municipality of Tel Aviv will pay back the investors their money plus a return that, as I said, is conditioned upon the level of success in this project. But it has a couple of things that make me even more proud, specifically in this project. The first one is that this is the first municipal impact investment or social impact bond investment in Israel. The second one is that we are not just talking about reducing loneliness among this elderly population, but some 6 months after the end of the project, there will be another measurement of level of loneliness among the participants in the program. And if we are able to demonstrate that the lower level of measurement of loneliness was kept at the lower level, then there will be additional payment to investment. So it's not just lowering the level of loneliness, but keeping it at the low level. So we need to work harder in providing them the toolbox to live their independent life and communicate with the community. And I guess that in the mix of technology and human factor is also something that is very unique. But I guess that the one thing that is very unique in this project is that among some more than 200 social impact bonds in 33 countries in the world today, this is going to be the first one that will be offered to the public. So if any of our listeners wants to take part of it, this will be offered with a minimum investment of $100 only on crowdfunding platform. It will take another 2 weeks to launch. And this is really the heart of the impact revolution that we are in, because I guess that every one of our listeners this evening ask themselves, how can I take part in this impact investment new movement or fashion or whatever buzzword or wherever you think it is. And I guess this brings impact investment into each and every individual or each and every home. There was a question that I promised to answer.
We'll take questions.
You want to do it now or later?
We'll take it very soon. I have another question just before we'll take it.
So just remind me that I promised to answer.
No worries. So there are ones who are hearing you for the last 45 minutes or so, and they think to themselves that it's too good to be true. You're leveraging capital in order to solve the biggest societal gaps that we have in our society. It might sound like impact washing. It might sound that you compromise for returns over chasing some sustainable development goals or others. And still, if we look at it from a perspective of, Yaron, you've said it very nicely, from an industry or want to be an industry, it's still a niche. So on one hand, we have a very noble idea, and we've spoken about PE and angel investments and VC and an investment house like SFI. But on the other hand, it's a very, very small niche. It's not growing fast enough. I'm certain that it has some downsides. And I'd like to hear a bit more about failures or gaps or obstacles in order to make it mainstream. So Sessiel, if we can start with you about not only about the bright side of impact investments or the impact revolution, but about some of the downsides, obstacles, and I guess that you've heard lots of no instead of yes.
Yes, so throughout my career, being in this space for so many years, certainly in the first 10 years, I mostly heard things like men telling me, if you want to talk about business, talk to me about the numbers. And if you want to talk about social, talk to my wife and she'll give you a grant from the family foundation. So I'm sorry to be so blunt about it, but this is how it was. And then we went to speak to investors who said, oh no, it's too risky. Why? Because it's a risk we perceive. And then that taught me that you really cannot confuse people with facts. Actually, if you bring them facts and research, they will still not be convinced, because if they have a pre-notion that there's a problem, then you're not going to convince them by research. Then I came across the skeptics, which I still do, who say there's no way you can maximize profit and impact. There's got to be some sort of trade-off. To which, again, no amount of facts will probably change these people's minds, but you can bring success stories. So no, it's not easy. And plus, I think that impact startups that are talking to mainstream investors and are talking about their impact mission and what they're trying to achieve are many times put in conflict with the investors who keep telling them that they have to stop talking about the social impact and just focus on the business, and all the rest is just nice to have, and we're not in the business of philanthropy, and our business is to maximize profits. So yes, definitely there are challenges in the market. I don't agree with your statement that the market is not growing fast enough. Actually, the impact investing market has grown by 100% year over year in the past 6-7 years, and reached $715 billion in 2019, doubling the year before. So I do believe that it's growing exponentially, and it will continue growing. What is the biggest challenge to me right now? And as I said in the beginning, my path has been from being very niche to coming into the mainstream, and that's where I'm right now. Pitango is a mainstream venture capital fund. It does not compromise its financial returns. It aims to maximize profits for its LPs, and there's not going to be any kind of philanthropy involved in what we do. Instead, it's really about looking at the products of the companies that we invested in and will invest in, and think about the social impact that can be created in a measurable way. And here I think we're touching upon a point which is critical, and I think someone also asked about it in the chat. If there is no impact measurement, then maybe there is no impact. So it's very clear that a lot of people would like to color themselves as saying that they're maybe impact startups or impact entrepreneurs or impact investors. And then when you ask them, okay, so tell me please, what is the impact that you're making? And they can't tell you because they're not measuring it. So measuring impact is not a science yet. but it is something that we are all engaged in. And without doing proper measurement, you really have no idea what you're doing. Further, you need to measure the net impact that you're making, because everybody can create also negative impact next to his positive impact. So we have to make sure that the negative impact doesn't overcome the positive impact. And that's something that we measure. So when we're talking about no compromise, and when we're talking about blending technology to really save the world, and I'm not being romantic here, I really do believe that technology is key to addressing the Sustainable Development Goals, then we must look at the companies that are the best and the most successful, because the ones who are most successful will sell a lot, but they'll also make a lot of impact, which is a derivative of their product. And we will have to make sure that they are aligned behind the mission that they've taken upon themselves, that they're accountable and transparent about the impact that they're creating, that they're measuring on an ongoing basis, that they manage themselves in a way that is fair and diverse and has good corporate governance and has good treatment to the environment and to the community. And that, I think, will really ultimately debunk all the myths about impact investing and all these things that people perceive as risks. So it's not easy. It's still, I will agree to one statement that you said, Dan, and that is, even though the impact investing market itself is growing exponentially, it's still a very small niche within the whole capital markets. So in order to grow into the capital markets, we have to debunk this myth that there is a trade-off. We have to bring and adapt the methodologies of impact to mainstream, and we have to show success stories. And I think by that, we will really win this war and have everybody on board. Because if you look at this younger generation of entrepreneurs and of investors and people who are asset owners, this is what they want. So if you don't invest in companies that create this dual look at business and impact, you lose.
Thank you. Sandrine, you founded the first Israeli impact PE backed by an institutional investor. And I guess that during the roadshow, you heard lots of negative aspects regarding impact and regarding your
Correct.
vision.
Correct. So
share?
yeah, I think you're exactly to the point. I think the biggest challenge in the Israeli market is the institutional investors, because they hold most of the capital in Israel. I mean, if you look at the pension funds, the insurance companies, they basically manage most of the public capital in Israel. And for me, the biggest challenge was to not only talk about trade-off, because it's really not only about trade-off. Even if you have to even go one step earlier and say, why should I even care about the environment? It's not my duty. My duty is to maximize return. And in the world, many pension funds are way beyond that. I mean, they say, of course, it's our duty. One of the biggest pension funds in the world, PGGM in the Netherlands, said, how can I invest in a company that will make my customers pay more taxes in 20 years because they pollute the rivers or they tax the environment in a way that they will have to pay more? Of course, it's my fiduciary duty to balance environmental behavior with returns. So they are thinking about fiduciary duty in a much more holistic way than the Israeli market. I have to say, we do have institutional investors. So a few of them said, yes, we like the proposition and we agree, or you convinced us that you are able to make market rate returns and measurable, meaningful impact. But I think as a whole, the market is not there. Not there yet. And I think Yaron talked about the National Advisory Board or the Forum for Israeli Advancement of the Impact Economy, or the new name that we decided not long ago. We are all members of this forum that Yaron is heading, and indeed, one of our main objectives is to increase the awareness of the capital supply, not the capital demand, not the entrepreneurs, because I think there are amazing entrepreneurs and impact entrepreneurs in Israel. There are hundreds of companies that can be backed by impact capital, but the supply of capital is not sufficient. So that's one of our biggest challenges for the years ahead.
Thanks. Yoel, I'm looking forward to hear your critical point of view on the impact scene in Israel and maybe elsewhere.
You never ask me a question. You just say that you're waiting to hear what I have to say. Give it like
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear about the criticism over the impact world. I'd like to hear about the downsides. I'd like to hear about the obstacles. It sounds too good to be true.
Well, I think it's far from being good to be true. Yes, I think there's a lot to conquer. And, you know, I think sometimes impact investors are philosophers. We love to talk about what impact is, what the definition of impact is. We love panels about that. And I think that I'm not talking about the formal definition, but people, when they speak of impact, they mostly think of something that needs to be below market returns. And sometimes this is the case. For example, that the bank I was talking about that I'm going to invest, that going to give loans, 3% loans to people who need that, etc. This is by definition below market rate. So I call it these kind of businesses, some kind of social businesses that you know that it's below market rate. On the other hand, there is no doubt that there is no contradiction between impact and making money. I think on the contrary, in the utopian world, yes, the impact, the value combined together. And I think the importance of measurement, in order to understand the measurement, let's take, for example, Mobileye, yeah? The measurement of the impact and the measurement of the business are pretty much the same. The more you have this technology in the car, less people are killed, more money for the company. So this is the model of the paradigm corporate. So I think, and I'm not sure, Sessiel is what I call the mother of impact in Israel. I learned from her a lot when I came in. I didn't need Ronald Cohen. Sessiel was good enough for me. But I think I take a little bit differently the concept of measuring. I mean, as long as you do something that brings value on its face to the world. For example, Mobileye, they don't measure. And if you ask me if I wanted to invest in something that brings so much value to the world, I would say Mobileye. Okay, so on one hand, you say we're a niche. Yeah, not many people invest in impact investment. I might agree to that, maybe yes, maybe not. But on the other hand, look at what the president and CEO of BlackRock said, that they are going to take into consideration social considerations when they decide where to invest. And you see regular corporations that start speaking the language. You know, you can call it greenwash. Maybe it's a greenwash, but the consciousness is becoming more open, wider, yeah? So I think in many aspects, we're very much into changing the world right now. And once we change the world, we don't need the concept of impact investment. We can let it go. Because in a way, once you say impact investment, there's an impact investment. So on the other hand, you have investments which are not impact. And this is something that we cannot agree to, because every investment should bring some kind of value to the world. The idea of a corporation is to bring value to the world, to the stakeholders, with some kind of product or services that moves the humanity forward. If it doesn't do so, then I call it not a non-impact, I call it a sick company. As Sessiel said, there is positive impact and negative impact. And once the negative impact is stronger than the positive, then it's a sick company and we need to maybe reconsider it. That's my 2 cents for that.
Yaron, criticism, dark side, obstacles that you face.
Okay, so I guess that I want to talk about the role of government. At the end of the day, we are considered to be a startup nation, dominating the world in the number of startups per capita, et cetera, number of engineers per capita, et cetera. And it all started in 1993 when the government initiated a tender to create the Yozma funds. There were 8 Yozma funds that really started the Israeli high-tech sector. So basically what we learn here is that you need a government that wants to take part, that wants to encourage a market or an industry or a theme that they want to deal with and play a role in it. And one of the things that we see moving slow is really the involvement of the government in encouraging impact investment. And it has all kinds of measures to it. For example, in the UK, we see that the British government has established a fund of funds, a private equity fund of funds that will invest into impact funds in order to create the market. It started with $1 billion fund, now it's a $2 billion fund. And the goal was to give a relief to the first generation of impact investors in order for them to invest with a peace of mind and understand that they have a partner, which is a government-funded money through this fund. It's called Big Society Capital. And it really gave the market the kick or the push that it needed. And now the market there is, I think, the deepest impact investment market in the world. I give you another example. Sandrine mentioned the presence of institutional investors in this impact market. So we do see some baby steps to make it happen. We saw a directive coming from the commissioner on the capital market 3 years ago that says if you are an institutional investor, provident fund, pension fund, or insurance company, you need to disclose whether you have an impact or ESG investment policy, but you need a coupling step. You need the public companies to be able to publish their ESG or impact data in order for institutional investors to build ETFs, to build provident funds and for us to be able to direct our money into this route. I'll give you a third example where government could be involved, and that relates to this COVID-19 time. Government is giving a lot of support to businesses, which is very needed. Some comes in the form of a grant, some comes in the form of a loan. Now, government could definitely play a role by saying you get a loan in order for your business recovery. But if you meet some certain impact metrics with your business, whether it be social or environmental, then we forgive part or all of the loan because you did your part in creating good public good for the society or for environment. The French government did it with Air France. They gave Air France a lot of money as a loan, and they told them, if you reduce your carbon footprint within a certain amount of years, then you need to pay back only part of the loan. So government can play a lot of role, give tax benefits to impact investors, etc. And government has to jump in. We see other governments taking an active role in this market. And I guess this will come, but first we have to have a stable government, no?
Thanks. So we'll take a last question, and I'll divide it to two, if I may. First is, how do you relate your experience at the Hebrew University, and do you think that it has any connection to what you're doing now as Hebrew University alumni? And second, I'm passionate about bridging the gap between intention and action. And I guess that we have dozens of participants in the crowd that are now being inspired and looking into getting into the impact world. So if you can share what you're looking for to invest, or what do you think someone who hears us now, what can he or she do in order to do so? And we'll start with the lady with the cat, my friend Sessiel. Hebrew University first, and then some best practices on what to do. And short, because we have 10 minutes and I want to hear you.
Okay. So I'll tell you a personal story. I was a terrible high school student. Terrible.
No way.
And absolutely. And actually, the first place that really taught me how to bring my curiosity to good use and to learn was the Hebrew University. And I spent 3 years in university in doing so many courses and research and just enjoying myself thoroughly, just learning. It was my first learning experience in university. So I'm full of gratitude and I owe the university a lot for that. And that really paved the way for me to be very, I would say, open-minded, because I studied a lot of things and I kept learning more disciplines and different things that really helped me throughout my career in thinking differently about everything. So that's on the Hebrew University side, and it's really been a very positive experience for me. So that's personal. In terms of how to get involved, so out of my own frustration of not scaling enough impact and tech, and out of the $715 billion that are invested in impact, only $2 billion are invested in tech. And out of my own frustration of not being available enough to speak to people who really want to just spend an hour with me and speak about how to get into this business and how to have a career in impact or how to make impact investments or what does it mean and be educated, I decided to establish a nonprofit called GITA, the Global Impact Tech Alliance. And GITA is an organization that is supposed to be for the impact tech community and by the impact tech community. And my aim with GITA, and I invite you all to look at gita.global. I co-founded it with Lihi Schooler, who's the #1 consultant in Israel in impact. And our aim there is to really create a community of practitioners. So we're not at the startup phase yet. We're looking at practitioners, so funds, investors, market makers, education accelerators, anybody who's doing consultants, anybody who's doing something to promote the ecosystem. Create a coherent database of people that can meet each other and be educated, work with the academy and with trainers to train more people in a scalable way, so that every time we speak to 100 people, not one-on-one. And hopefully that will connect also with the work that you're doing then at the university and bring forward many more opportunities and people to really take action on really coming into this market, because really this is the best thing you can do. You wake up in the morning, it's not like going to work. I'm so passionate about what I do. I mean, this is who I am. What I do is who I am. And I really wish everyone to have that kind of passion.
Thank you so much. Sandrine, Hebrew University.
So, yes, well, in high school, I was, unlike Sessiel, I was a very dedicated student, and I was convinced that I was going to be a nuclear scientist. And in the army, everything changed, and I actually studied economics in the Hebrew University, and I think that really influenced my whole career in terms of management and understanding the connection between, what we're doing and how it translates to, the basic economics principles and values. My best friend is still from the university days, and it had a great impact on my career. I also have to say that it's been a pleasure also to be in touch with the Hebrew University in the last year, especially with all the new energy and new ideas, and it's really an inspiration. Now, about how the Hebrew University can play a role. I think we are using a lot the word ecosystem. Ecosystem is not that everybody now will want to be an impact investor. God forbid, okay? That's not an ecosystem. An ecosystem is that we're going to have PhD students that are looking at really serious questions that will advance the impact economy. An ecosystem is people that go to work for the Ministry of Finance will start to ask the questions that Yaron was raising. I mean, how can we put impact considerations into the budget? How can we put impact considerations into a bid of who will manage the Dead Sea in the next 20 years? I mean, impact should be a part of our life, whatever we do. So if I'm an investor, that's obvious. But if I'm a tech entrepreneur, it's also obvious. But there are also so many other parts to play in the ecosystem. So I think the role of the university is to make sure that everyone understands the basics, avoiding harm, contributing to solutions, sustainable development goals, that everyone understands the basics, the values behind the impact economy, and that everybody finds his or her own place in it, whether they work for an insurance company or the academy or a private equity fund or a startup.
Thank you so much. Yaron, you're next. Please be concise. We don't have much time.
Okay.
I'd love to hear your experience and then your best practices to someone who wants to get into this market.
Okay, 2 quick points. First one, when I studied business and accounting in the Hebrew U, and I come from a privileged family, it was not a problem for me. I also got a stipend from you guys. Sometimes you're wrong, but nevertheless. And I saw some brilliant students that were really the future of this country, that had to drop off because of lack of means to complete their studies. And I guess that this was part of the consideration when we launched our first social impact bond to reduce dropouts from higher education, specifically aimed at computer science, which is, by the way, very successful. My advice to our audience here tonight, how can you take part in this whole impact revolution, is very simple. The next time that a salesperson from a pension fund comes to see you and convinces you to put your money in their pension fund because you pay some fraction of a percent less in management fees, ask them the following question. Do you have an impact investment part in this pension fund when I'm sure that the money of my money, that my pension money will do good or at least not do bad? If you do have one, I want to shift all my pension savings there. And if you don't have one, please create one. We are now, I see 69 participants in this call. So we have 69 more voices. And when we have 69,000 more voices, it will happen. Thanks.
Yoel, we saved the best for last. Hebrew University experience and some best practices from you to pay it forward to someone else.
Okay. We're talking about also the impact of the Hebrew U on my journey, right? Exactly. So I studied philosophy. These are the 2 questions. Am I correct?
Yes, and you can answer the third one that you choose.
Okay. So I think, but I was supposed to be a professor in the university. I was sure I was going to be a professor. I like the intellect. I studied philosophy and law, and I studied and taught philosophy and law, and I really liked it. And I think there are 2 concepts that you can take both from philosophy and corporations. I taught many years corporate law. So one is that a corporate is, you can consider a corporate as an entity, as a consciousness, like a human being, that all its organs are like our own organs that need to coordinate together with each other to maximize their capabilities and possibilities. And I think this image is very good because it has nothing to do with morality. It just has to do with being effective. If you want to be effective, you need to think holistically about your own organs, your hand, your legs, your mind. You need to sleep. You need to do things very in a balanced way. The same with the corporate. It's not about maximizing profit. And this is the third thing that I really learned very, very deeply when I studied corporate law. The idea of a corporate is not to maximize profits. It's a myth. It's completely wrong. You need to watch at the guy who wrote, who got the Nobel Prize. What's his name? The neo-capitalist that everybody learns. Right? What's his name? Come on. There was Adam.
We only talk about Hebrew University professors tonight.
What?
Milton Friedman, you mean?
Milton Friedman, exactly. I love watching his YouTubes. I completely agree with almost everything he says. He comes from a humane world. When he said that the idea of the concept, the idea of the corporate is to maximize profits, what he's trying to do, what he's saying actually is that as long as we focus on maximizing the profits, this will be the best way to bring value to all its stakeholders. Of course, he was wrong in many aspects. But the idea that the goal of corporate is to maximize profits is completely wrong. We need to eliminate it out of our head. The idea of the corporate is just, it's a celebration of giving. It's the best way to maximize giving to the world by cooperating together with each other. My advice for people who want to get into the impact world, my true advice is just understand business better. Because I think most important thing for impact investors is to understand business. Because, you know, when I started impact investment 10 years ago or so, I met people who wanted to change the world, and the first half of the meeting was amazing. We just imagined how we're going to save the world. And the second half was quite disappointing, where I understood those people just don't know business that much. And sometimes people get to impact investment because they have some kind of philanthropic a heart or whatever, which is a need. But we need people who know how to do business. Because if people will not know how to do business, then we will not be able to scale the idea of impact. It will stay a niche. So this is like the most important advice that I can think of.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank my distinguished panel members. It was a great honor to have you, Sessiel, Sandrine, Yoel, and Yaron. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank my awesome friends at the Hebrew University, Guy, Shoshana, Mara, Ram, Max, all of you, you're super, and you've made it happen. And last and not least, I'd like to thank all the participants for staying late until now, or wherever you are. Thank you. Don't be a stranger. I'm certain that I'm speaking not on behalf of myself. Would be more than happy to hear opinions, to hear the feedback, and to help anyone who'd like to do something in order to make this world a bit of a better place. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan, for hosting us, and thanks to my friends.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.